Ladies and gentlemen, if you can please take your seats. We're going to be waiting a few minutes, so you have a little bit of time to prepare, but I would ask you, please, just a few housekeeping details. As a courtesy to the speakers, we request that you turn your phones to silent. We do have camera crews here, so we want to give them the maximum opportunity to be able to cover the event. And can we turn down the sound, please? Okay, thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the press conference of EUROFER, the European Steel Association, on Section 232. We have several guests here and speakers. We are still waiting for the French Minister for Finance and Economy, Mr. Bruno Le Maire. He will be here any minute, but as time is short, we start already now. I would also like to welcome in particular the Spanish Secretary General for Industry and Small and Medium Enterprise, Mrs. Begoña Cristeto. Welcome. We have here Gerd Götz, the Director General of European Aluminium Association. Welcome, Gerd. We have here Luis Colunga, Deputy Secretary General of Industrial European Trade Union, who is basically representing all the manufacturing industry unions in Europe. Welcome, Luis. We have from the European steel industry the president of EUROFER, Mr. Gert van Poelvoorde. And we have also here today Bernard Tallemans, who is the COO, Stainless and Electrical Steel Europe of Aperam. So I think as time is short and our Spanish guest has to leave in around about 40 minutes, we start now, and I would like to invite the president of EUROFER, Gert van Poelvoorde.
Thank you, Axel. So first of all, dear ministers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by first thanking all the presents here, and also I hope that the Minister of France will still come. This shows a bit the importance of what is happening today. It shows also that there is close relationship between the political authorities, the Commission and the industry for this case. So we should not forget, when we talk about steel industry, the last 10 years we went through several crises. Let me remind you that 2009 we had the financial crisis, in 2011 we went through the Eurozone crisis, and in 2015-16 we were hit by the Chinese flood of imports, which pulled our industries very strongly down. This is all in about 10 years. Now we are again in a new crisis, and the crisis, let's call it the crisis US Section 232. So where we will be hit, as you have seen last week in the decision made by President Trump, with 25% tariff on the steel imports in US across the board. So this is a problem not only for the steel imports, this is also a broader problem. This is also a problem for the global trading system. I must say that when I heard this news, my first reaction was a bit one of astonishment, very big surprised and puzzlement. Because the US at the end is a good friend, and they are very good business partners of ours. So it's very surprising to see that we will be hit by their measures. And it is hard to understand, it's hard to see why European companies should be considered as a threat to the US economy and to the US security. And it's hard to even to understand why the US needs the US Section 232, because they have, as we have in Europe, they have similar institutions as we have to protect the market economy from subsidized imports or from unfair trade. Even the number of anti-dumping cases that are active in the United States are much higher than in Europe, and also the tariffs on those anti-dumpings are much higher than in Europe. So, but let me maybe first put together some volumes, to frame a bit the discussion. So, the European Union has been exporting in 2017 about 30 million tons of steel. From this 30 million tons of steel, 5 million tons went to the US. So this is already the first hit we will get. The 5 million tons we are exporting to the US will now be hit with 25% tariff. But there is a second hit we will get, and this is the problem of the increased imports that will come from trade deflection. Since it is clear that the imports that the US is stopping will find a home market into Europe. And then, when you take a look at the numbers, you have to imagine that Europe has been importing 40 million tons last year, in 2017. This is a new record, a peak since crisis, even after having the dumping cases in place. By the way, the US imports is about 35 million tons steel. So the imported volume in Europe is even higher than the imported volume in the United States. Now, when you take a look at the 35 million tons that are imported in the United States, and you take out Canada and Mexico that have had their exception from the US administration, we think that there is a risk that about 13 million ton, 13 million ton, will find an additional way into Europe. So when you know that the 40 million ton is already a peak, and then we will get 30 million ton on top of it, you can imagine what kind of devastating effect this will have on the steel industry, which has just started the last 12 months to recover from everything that I mentioned and crises before. So when this will happen, you can be sure that again thousands and 10,000s of jobs will be at stake. 30 million ton imports on top of the 40 million ton is disastrous. So that's why we are here, and that's why we hope that also the political authorities and the political leaders and the Commission will stand shoulder to shoulder to find solutions on this. Our preferred solution, by far, of course, is that the European Union would find an agreement with the US, in the form of an exception or in the form of a real good agreement. But we don't know whether this will happen. We know that there is time until 23rd of March. 23rd of March is the day where the tariffs will really come on stream. So let's hope that the European Union is successful in this. In parallel, when this will not happen, we cannot sit still and not prepare. So we have to prepare. We have to make a plan to safeguard, to introduce safeguard measures, as the European Union has been doing in 2001 and 2002, as there was a similar decision of the United States. Now, I'm not going to go into details what these safeguard measures should be. There are multiple possibilities. For me, there are two important topics here. First, it has to be fast. So we cannot, and we have had a lot of discussions in the past on trade defense instruments in Europe. So we cannot afford, in this case, when the tariffs are hitting the markets on 23rd of March, to discuss months and months to come to conclusion. So it has to be swift and fast. The second is that, of course, independent on what you define, it has to achieve the goal. So it has to work. And of course, in Europe, we are still fighting for free trade. So it has to work under the normal WTO resolutions and regulations. Now, we should not forget that this whole thing is coming from one single problem. It is the overcapacity that the steel industry is facing since years. And that is a topic we have been discussing for years now, and it's also on the agenda of the Global Forum of Steel Excess Capacity. So this is the place where this problem should be solved. There is no solution in very strong, absurd protective measures when there is a solution in overcapacity steel reduction. The overcapacity of steel was on the program of the G7, of the G20, of the OECD. All world leaders are discussing this. This is the way it has to be done. And there, in this discussion, the US is a very strong ally. US and EU and the European Union are fighting together to have this solved. This is the place where we should have this discussion. And let me maybe first close with the last remark. We do not fight for protective measures. We fight for just a free and fair trade and a rules-based trade. This is what WTO is standing for. This is what Europe has been fighting for. This is what US has been fighting for. And I really hope that US is going to fight further for this. The rule-based trade is partly being pushed by the United States in the past. They are the core of this rule-based trade. They have been defining those measures themselves together with a lot of companies. So let's hope that they are going in the same direction, they don't change track, and they keep on going to have this resolved on a WTO level. So I look forward to your questions and to the discussions, then we can go further in detail onto this. Thank you.
Thanks, Gert. Now we have a translation here for Spanish and French, and of course English as well for any of the speakers, and later on also for the questions. Now I propose the following order. We continue first with the steel representatives, Bernhard Hallemans, COO. Now I see the Minister Bruno Le Maire, Minister for Economy and Finance of France, has arrived. Welcome, Mr. Minister. So I just mentioned we have, of course, the translation for French and Spanish as well. So if the Minister and the Secretary General also would like to use their own language, that is, of course, possible here tonight. Now, I propose that we just continue with one short statement from another CEO of the European steel industry, from Aperam, and afterwards we go to the representative of the aluminium industry, Gerd Götz, and then to the unions, Industrial, Luis Colunga, and afterwards we go to the representatives of the member states. So please, Bernhard.
Thank you, Axel. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be very short because I can only support what the President just explained to you. I come myself from a stainless steel producer with an important footprint in Europe, and the situation at this moment is a serious situation. We as well in stainless steel are faced with exports, with imports, and I can give you the stainless steel numbers, but you will see that the orders of magnitude are exactly the same as what the President just said. We are not looking for any escalation, but we are looking for a fair and a trade ground that is even for all players. The most important thing we would like to see is speed. And I think the President also said it, speed in implementation of any measures that could give us this fair ground of playing. And this is the most important message I would like to convey to you today. Thank you.
Good evening, and EUROFER, thank you for inviting European Aluminium. We may compete in daily business very fiercely, but I think this is an issue where we have to stand together, and I can only compliment what your President had, what you have said. These are really incredibly important times for us to stand this situation, and I do not want to repeat the fundamentals because there's pretty much the same for the aluminium industry, but I want to give you a few basics where the steel and the aluminium industry are different, because it's, I think, for you also good, important to know. So imposing tariffs on aluminium is certainly also here the wrong tool, and it does not fit the real challenge we face, and that's Chinese overcapacity and nothing else. One can summarize the triple negative effect of unjustified tariffs as follows. First, they will further imbalance global trade flows. Second, they will undermine the strong EU-US trade synergies. And third, they will deviate attention and political momentum from a long-standing solution on the steady increase of the Chinese excess capacity. Just imagine, while we all expect a positive outcome of the discussions between the US and the EU authorities on 232, the aluminium capacity in China is growing quarter after quarter. Excess capacity alone in China last year totaled 11 million metric tons of aluminium. This is 40% of the rest of the world's total production, and even 5 times bigger than Europe's production. Believe me, the healthy global demand for aluminium is driven by energy-efficient and low-carbon solutions for building, for automotive, for packaging markets. And instead of thinking about innovative pathways and reinforce the unique synergies with the Americans, the 232 announcement will spark distrust and destabilize global trade flows. I can hardly understand who can benefit from such a move. Probably too few, and only for a very short time. We all know customers and consumers of our material in the end pay the bill. But there's more. We will see a disruption of the current trading relationship between the aluminium sectors in the United States and Europe, which have strongly interlinked value chains and a significant number of multinationals operating in those territories. And above all, we also expect that the measures will likely result in the redirection of aluminium products from third countries to Europe. Such redirection can hit European markets massively, and that's why decisive actions must be taken to neutralize effects on our entire value chain with its more than 600 plants, including primary production, semi-fabrication and recycling. To neutralize effects on jobs and future investments, and to neutralize also the effects on an industry that directly and indirectly employs 1 million people and yields an annual turnover of around about 40 billion euros. To conclude, some key messages to our decision makers. The European Union as a bloc and all its institutions are now challenged by a potential trade crisis. This crisis can also be seen as an opportunity. Europe should speak with one voice and define a clear plan to respond to any attempt to impose unjustified duties to our strategic industries. Two measures will neglect the root cause of today's global aluminium unbalances, increasing overcapacities in China and unfair trade practices that follows. This should be the global agenda, and the EU should set it right, and soon with partners like the US. We urge Brussels and Washington and all other G20 members to continue to work together in creating an enforceable global playing field through Global Aluminium Forum, as already suggested last year by the G7, and as we see already taking place with the steel industry. And of course, we do not wish to see retaliation that would further escalate the situation. But should the US act in this dossier with a formal confirmation of measure, we count on the EU Commission, shoulder to shoulder with the Member States, to defend its aluminium industry by taking appropriate and commensurate measures, including immediately implement surveillance measures to monitor market developments and, if necessary, to safeguard measures. We also count on Member States to schedule an extraordinary meeting to prepare for an adequate response, and the European Parliament to speak loud and clear this week in plenary, showing the necessary EU unity that can lead to a real game changer. Europe should show leadership and demonstrate to all citizens that together it's possible to define a fair and global agenda on trade. With that, European Aluminium thanks very much EUROFER for this opportunity, and we remain open for more questions than later.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I don't know why I'm in the far left, but well, okay, well, yes, it's true that it's a big opportunity to be here, the politicians, companies, authorities, and the producer and the union. We are very concerned about the announcement of the President Trump to impose unfair and unjustified tariffs on European steel and aluminium. For us, it may cause a strong effect on European jobs and steel communities across Europe, steel and aluminium. Mr. Bumbleborde talked before about the last 10 years. I would like to say that in the steel and aluminium industry we are discussing and with a lot of problems in the last 40, 50 years. We started a lot of years in the restructuration. We remember we started with the petroleum crisis in the 70 years. After, with the Berlin fall, the Berlin Wall, when fallen, there are some countries in Eastern Europe that today are in restructuration, because in Bulgaria, in Romania, and other countries, the steel and aluminium restructuration is keeping, and we are working in a strong restructuration. There are numerous companies on merger. We are now in the steel and aluminium working in mergers, in acquisition. We are in a strange and difficult situation. Remember the discussion about the joint venture, the Tata Steel, ThyssenKrupp, due to the crisis, the acquisition of Filba by ArcelorMittal is now dealing with the European Commission. We are in a very difficult moment. And now with the President Trump, well, we continue. We imagine 1 year ago, or 1 year more or less ago, when Mr. Trump won the election, that then started very difficult times in Europe. I remember the day that Trump won the American election. We were in a demonstration here in Brussels, the 9th of November, fighting against the problem in the steel and other sector. We are here fighting with the ETS reform because we want a clean economy, a clean companies, but with time, with the transition time. We were fighting with the trade defense instrument because, you explained before, we have a treaty with the Chinese imports, with the Russian import, with other imports. For this reason, the Union, we are 40 years fighting with this sector. Now the sector is managing to get back on its feet with increased pressures such as ETS, as I said before, and access in clean and affordable energy. The European sector faces enough challenge without a potential trade war being thrown into the mix. We don't want a trade war. But I want to be honest, we want that the Commission take the measure that we need. We don't know what's the future. You talked about the next step of United States, but we ask the Commission to defend our workers, defend our industry, defend our sector, aluminium and steel. Industrial Europe supports all the steps from the European Union in taking fair and just action and calls for immediate market surveillance and crucial safeguard measures to be put in place. We must protect our industry. We must protect our workers in Europe because we think that we are now in risk, and it's a serious risk. The European steel and aluminium industries produce high-quality products. We export to the United States, you said before, 5 million tons of steel. We don't export aluminium, but the risk is the imports from aluminium with this kind of measure. But it's a high-quality product. We are very concerned with the decision of Mr. Trump, and also we are very concerned with the statement from the United Steelworkers, the trade union from the United States, because yesterday in a statement talked about unfair steel and predator steel, and we in Europe are not working in an unfair and predator way. We have skills, we have a high quality work, we have a lot of investment, we are discussing a social dialogue with the companies, and we are not predators, we are not the third countries, we are the European Union workers, and we are working in a fair way. In Europe, we play by the rules. We respect international trade law, and we have fought hard for European Union trade defense measures in line with World Trade Organization rules. We are agree with you told before because we are not third countries, we are not China, we are not other countries, because here we work with social rights. And this is very important because everybody is talking about unfair, but we are talking about the rights of the worker. And here in Europe we are working with social rights. It's very important for us. The measure of Trump talking about the national security of the United States is an excuse. I said last week to my colleagues that if I was an American worker, I was an American citizen, I will be very happy because if my security is with the 25% of taxes of 10%, say, well, okay, I agree because if we are working in a security way, we are a citizen in security, but I think the geopolitical is another thing. We are very concerned that Donald Trump, the same day that talk about the European Union and other countries like Australia, Canada, talk about the unfair practice and predator practice, the same day say, no, I agree to have a meeting with the North Korean president. Well, I don't know what is more risk to the security of the United States, the steel, aluminium of Europe, or this kind of meeting. But it's the decision of Donald Trump. But it's an excuse. We need to be very clear. Talking about national security is an excuse. In the United States there are trade defense instruments, as Mr. Van Poelvoorde said before, and more than in Europe. And we want to talk with the American people face to face, say, well, what's your problem? And the problem, what's the real problem of the aluminium and steel? Is the overcapacity. We say a lot of time ago, the overcapacity of steel and aluminium in the world is the problem of the low price, and is the problem and excess of offer. This is the real problem, and we want to be very clear. In Europe, there are no overcapacity. And it's also, in United States, there are no overcapacity. And we want to work together with United States workers, with Industrial Global, is our sister organization, working about overcapacity in the future, because it's not our problem, it's the problem of China and other regions, but it's not the European problem. And what we ask the politicians, it's true that there are OECD committee talking about overcapacity, the G20, the G7, there are a lot of committees, but there are talking, and there are no results. There are no results because it's increasing the production in China, in other countries. For example, in Iran, the production will be increasing the double in 5-7 years, and in Europe we are always reducing. It's not our problem, and we need to work very fast and with solution, talking about overcapacity. This is the real problem. To finalize, we want to say the European Union, you need to work on it. We want safeguard measures. We don't want, a commercial war, a trade war, but we want to defend our industry, our workers, and we'll be very, very, very active in defending our sector. At the end, we have some meetings with the European Commission. We have some meetings with United Steelworkers, the American Union, very, very close, to talk about it and to defend our steel and to say very clear that the problem of the national security is not the European Union. We are very close to look for a solution, but I think there will be a problem with the sanction, because if Donald Trump, except Canada, except Mexico, European Union, South Korea, Australia, Japan, I don't know what will be the measure. I think he's in a jail because the decision before the election is bad. If there are no this sanction from the European Commission, we will be very clear. Talk about our capacity and fight against this kind of measure.
Thanks a lot, Luis. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 1 year of moderate recovery behind us after almost 10 years of crisis. Now, we cannot let President Trump to destroy this. He cannot destroy the moderate recovery in which our industry has entered. And you have just heard from the aluminium industry, from the steel industry representatives, and from the unions that we have a united front, and we are supporting the European Commission and the European Council and taking all the measures, all the instruments at its hand to defend the interests of the European steel and aluminium industries. Now, I would like to give the word to the French Minister Le Maire. Monsieur le Ministre, vous êtes le bienvenu. Je vous en prie de prendre la parole.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want to be too long, but because I'm here, first of all, to listen to your assessment and listen to your views. I just wanted to recall the current situation. We all know that there is a problem with steel overcapacity in the world. The question is, what is the right answer to that problem? We strongly believe that the right answer to the question of steel and aluminium overcapacity in the world is not protectionism, and that we have to address that question in the multilateral framework, either the G20 or the WTO. This is what we, Europeans, we strongly believe. I would like also to recall what is at stake for us, strong allies of the United States of America. What is at stake is thousands of jobs, hundreds of companies, thousands of plants, either in Italy, in Spain, in France, in Germany. And we want to defend our jobs. We want to protect our economic interests. And we want to be very clear towards our American friends. We do not want to enter into any kind of trade war, but we will defend our economic interests. We will defend our plans. We will defend our industry. And we will strongly defend our jobs. The answer that we call for and the response that we, French people, we call for is a strong, united answer from the European nations. We think that we have to put all the responses on the table, either countermeasures or safeguard measures, to make very clear that we will be strong. Do not have any doubt about that. Europe is a strong continent. Europe is the gathering of strong nations which are able to defend their interests. We have to make a very clear assessment of the economic consequences of the Trump administration's decisions on our economy and our industry. And thereafter, we will have to explain very clearly that we have the necessary steps and the necessary measures on the table to defend our own interests, our industry, and our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Mrs. Cristetto, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this press conference. For me, it's really very important for my country to be with you this afternoon. It's not easy to be the last person to take the podium because you have already said everything. But okay, I think that the measure announced by the President Trump regarding trade and steel run against free trade principles promoted worldwide for the European Union and the World Trade Organization. This measure will have a very negative impact on the EU steel production and exports. They will also have a damaging effect on the US export using steel as an input. The results will be lower trade, higher prices, and a more protectionist and nationalist attitudes towards world trade. This will reduce economic and social welfare of the countries concerned. We have to take measures to protect this sector for unfair trade restriction by the US and agree that the European Union coherent common response to this unilateral measure taken by the USA is necessary. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm afraid I have to leave because I have to take a plane, but the most important is that you can count on Spain. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary General. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. These were indeed very encouraging words. And again, we thank the Council, the Minister, and you in particular for your courage to support our industry here also tonight and in the coming days. Of course, we have maybe still some days to go until the 23rd of March, when the decision on Section 232 will have to be implemented. And maybe there are some days where still will be some room for negotiation in order, of course, to exempt the European Union member states from the measures, but maybe also to find some agreement on the way forward on global overcapacities, the root cause of the decision of Section 232. Now, I would suggest that we go around now for questions and answers. Please identify yourself and identify also maybe the person you would like to see answering the question. So I start here in the first row.
David Iago from Argus Media.
You can also come here if you like and ask the question from here.
I think it's a question for Geert, but maybe the Minister as well. obviously, you don't want to give the detail of the safeguard measures that you're discussing, that will come. But the general outline, you want a quota-based system. Do you see the EU moving towards that? And then in terms of the timing, do you think it can come quick enough to actually be of use?
I think this here, I don't know whether it's working. No, it's not working.
Maybe this one.
Perfect.
So, as I mentioned, there are, of course, the two most important topics. So, speed is the first thing. So, we hope that it can be done in 1 month. European Union is saying us, we have to translate to all the different languages, and we have to have the member states also voting on it, so it may take a bit longer. We are convinced that when we have the maximum speed in Europe, we could do it in 1 month. From the measures, as I mentioned in my opening speech, for me the most important is that it works. So now, do quota work? Yes, quota work. Do quotas work with the tariff combination? Yes, it also works with the tariff combination. So this is just a matter of how you define the measures, and as I mentioned, they have to be under the WTO regulation. So I think the Commission will now investigate in detail all the technical details and take a look what is the best fitting measure that fulfills the WTO regulations and does what it has to do. Be sure that we are not getting this deflected imports from the US.
Thank you, Gert. Oh, there's another micro. That's excellent. So maybe the minister would also like to answer. No? Next question, please.
Hello, Joanna Sapinska, MLEX. Question to everybody, I think. The situation is very dynamic. You said that you are in a close contact with the Commission. There was a visit of the USTR on Saturday in Brussels, a meeting with Commissioner Malmström. Do you have any signals of any chances for this exemption for the EU to be granted to the EU? Do you expect further meetings, or just if you could give us the update of what's going on right now? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I try. According to our information, there has been no progress on Section 232, but as I said before, there's still some days to go, up to the 23rd of March. However, we understand that there has been made progress in terms of an agreement how the EU and the US will negotiate for the WTO a strengthening of some of the rules on subsidies, for example. But this is, however, independent from this current Section 232 case.
Philip Blankenship from Reuters. A question more for you, Mr. Le Maire. You're obviously aware that there are safeguards being discussed and then countermeasures as well. Does France support countermeasures? I mean, maybe not. You don't want to go into the details specifically, but just in general. And is there not a risk that if the EU takes countermeasures, that it will spark a response from Trump, which he's kind of already indicated, and slide towards a trade war?
Once again, we do not want to enter into any kind of trade war with the United States. But I think that the most important risk would be not to take any risk and not to give any answer, any response to the decision of the Trump administration. We were not the ones who decide unilateral measures against the steel and the aluminium industry in France, in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and in all Europe. So we have to give a response to that decision. I strongly believe that the most important risk for Europe would be not to give any response to the unilateral measures decided by the Trump administration, because it would give the impression to the European people that we are weak. that we do not have any possibility to answer to those decisions. And my deep belief is that if the European people have the impression that you remain without any response to that kind of decision, they will lose confidence in European politicians and in the European Union as a whole. So that's why I'm calling for a strong, united response from the Commission and from the European nations. And I think that we are on the right track. I carefully listened to the answers and to the statements from the Commissioner, from different people from the Commission, and I think that we all share the same assessment of the situation, and we all share the same necessity of responding to the Trump's administration. I just had a meeting with Cecilia Malmström, and I think we exactly share the same point of view on the situation. And that's good news for Europe, that's good news for European nations, and that's good news for European people.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Since you have the microphone, maybe 3 more questions for the ministers. Who has a question for the minister?
Maybe one in French, if possible. Otherwise, I run the risk of being criticized.
In French, that will remove some of the hand raisings. The gentleman with the red scarf, please. Please identify yourself.
Thank you. My name's David Price. I
In
write
French?
but also Schumann project, Schumann.info. And that's why I'm addressing this question to the Minister and maybe others. But the word fair has been used several times. I wonder whether the whole of the steel industry's got on the wrong step to start off with. There was a secret meeting between the Commission and Mr. Mittal, who owns the largest steel company in the world, beyond the size of the Chinese companies. ArcelorMittal was involved in price fixing for 18 years, one of the biggest scandals and cartels. But under the European system, we had a way of getting a fair solution, which was a tripart solution between trade unions, steelmakers, and the people who are not here are the consumers. And I wonder whether we can get this back on track.
I'm not aware of that kind of meeting. I just want, before answering to a last question, but please in French, and then I will have, unfortunately, to leave. And I would like to thank you for that very useful meeting, because everybody has to be aware that what is at stake is really very important, not only for nations, but for people, for workers, for our jobs. So I'm not aware of that kind of meeting. What I can assure you is that we really want to stick to our international commitments and to the international rules, and we have to come back to multilateralism. I really think that unilateral measures are not the right way of dealing with the question of steel overcapacity in the world.
French. Who speaks French?
Merci, la radio-télévision suisse. Toi, Milierina. Monsieur le ministre, jugeant par les différentes déclarations de l'administration américaine, parfois un peu contradictoires, est-ce que vous pensez que c'est vraiment une question d'acier? Est-ce que c'est dans les discussions sur l'acier qu'on trouvera la solution, ou peut-être l'administration américaine a des autres intentions? Merci.
Moi, je ne fais aucun procès d'intention à l'administration américaine. Les États-Unis sont nos alliés, les États-Unis sont nos amis, et le peuple américain est un peuple ami. Mais je suis bien obligé de constater, comme le font tous les autres États européens, les décisions qui viennent d'être annoncées par le président Trump. Une augmentation des tarifs sur l'acier de l'ordre de 25%, une augmentation des tarifs sur l'aluminium de l'ordre de 10%. Toutes ces décisions devront être confirmées dans les semaines qui viennent. Et la France considère que l'Union européenne doit apporter une réponse forte et unie à ces décisions américaines. Elle considère que la bonne réponse aux surcapacités en matière d'acier ne peut pas être une réponse unilatérale et que nous avons besoin d'une réponse multilatérale, soit dans le cadre du G20, soit dans le cadre d'une organisation mondiale du commerce. Et nous appelons donc l'Union européenne et la Commission à envisager toutes les mesures nécessaires pour faire respecter les intérêts européens, que ce soit des contre-mesures ou des mesures de sauvegarde qui permettront de protéger nos intérêts économiques. La France tient aussi à dire que ce qui est en jeu dans cette affaire-là, ce sont des emplois, ce sont des sites industriels, qui sont souvent des sites industriels fragiles, car chacun sait que le marché de l'acier est difficile. Il est donc parfaitement légitime que l'Europe défende ses intérêts en matière industrielle et en matière d'emploi. Je voudrais que nos amis américains prennent conscience que les décisions qui peuvent être prises dans les jours qui viennent peuvent conduire à l'affaiblissement d'industries européennes, à la fermeture de sites, au licenciement de salariés, et que ce n'est évidemment pas ce que un continent comme le continent européen peut attendre d'un allié aussi proche que les États-Unis. J'ai eu l'occasion de rencontrer la commissaire européenne Cecilia Malmström tout à l'heure pour lui dire que la France partageait son évaluation de la situation et la nécessité d'envisager toutes les mesures disponibles pour défendre nos intérêts économiques, nos intérêts en termes d'emploi, nos intérêts sur l'acier et sur l'aluminium. C'est parce que nous serons forts entre Européens, parce que nous serons unis entre Européens, que, je l'espère, nous pourrons éviter une guerre commerciale qui ne fera que des perdants. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. So we continue in English. Maybe you can come closer, a little bit more to the middle. So more questions here, please, Platz.
Yes, Peter Brennan from Platts. I just wanted to ask about this 13 million tonne figure that you think will be redirected to the European Union. So this instantly assumes that the US is going to produce an extra million tonnes a month plus, which seems bold. And it also assumes that all of this steel will go to the European Union rather than being displaced to either the domestic markets of the other exporters. I mean, how did you get to this 13 million tonne figure? It seems dramatic.
Yes, of course, it is dramatic. It doesn't only seem dramatic. We are talking about 26 million tons, which are imported into the US from the global world, except Canada and Mexico, which would be an additional 9 million tons. So 26 million tons, and most of that will have to look for new destinations. Sorry, someone, yeah, no, it's working. So we made an estimation that at least half of the 26 million tons will have to look for new destinations. And of course, the European Union is the major open market. So naturally, this would be the first direction. So it could be 13 million tons, it could be 8 million tons, but it will be catastrophic, that's for sure. So for that reason, we need swift action, swift safeguard action from the European Commission.
Maybe one remark on your million ton. So I think you have seen in the press that US companies are preparing to extend capacities massively. So they are restarting blast furnaces, and they're going to invest in new electric arc furnaces. This is all over in the press, which is now announced. But the measures are not even taking place. So, so this will come on stream. So, by the way, it's not helping overcapacity worldwide when you start to restart installations and to rebuild installations and keeping the imports out. But this will find a solution. So. Of course, what is clear is that when this measure comes fast, that there is also a threat for the consumers in US. This is for sure.
Hi, Chris Davis with Platts as well. This question is for Mr. Goetz. In terms of aluminum, do you have any similar numbers in terms of exports that may come to Europe? And also, from a capacity perspective, it seems like the U.S. would not be able to ramp up capacity to meet demand. So would there still be a need for imports in the U.S. Going forward?
We have made similar calculations, and what we have seen is that our rather low estimate is that the moment the tariffs are in place, we can wait for around about 3-4 weeks to see the first primary production coming to Europe, because Europe is the biggest, second biggest after China, the second biggest market for aluminium globally. And as for those who are producing, be it Russia, be it Middle East, a very close market also. Those who are also delivering to the US as we speak. So this calculation is rather conservative. And then there will be a second wave coming in when you look at the semi-fabricated products. That's where we come into the rolling extruded products. We will see here probably over the period of 6 to 9 months, 35+% more products coming to Europe. Again, very conservative estimation. That's why the surveillance is so important, that we can react as fast as the products come to Europe, that we have a system that keeps it on the level of the last 3 years, for instance. So quite a similar situation in terms of the redirection we will see. And Europe is an attractive market. That's good to hear again, but it's in these cases, if used based on a unilateral measure, certainly not the way how fair trade should be done.
More questions? This is not the case. Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We wish you a nice evening, and I think this is not the last word on this issue. So, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.